Hi, welcome to Your Health Your Way. We're back. It's been 10 days on all raw vegan foods for me, 70% raw vegan foods for Lisa. We had a long session last night, so we're going to take a few minutes this evening to update you on the last couple of days. So how are you feeling, Lisa?
My experience was pretty interesting. As you know from watching other videos, that on the weekend I consumed most of my cooked foods, which included a large amount of dairy in the form of cheese and lattes. So Monday morning I woke up feeling just very heavy energetically. I woke up with phlegm and stuffy nose, short of breath. I felt bloated all day, and I was just off. It was just a very sluggish feeling. But all day Monday, I had smoothies, I had whole fruit, I had dates, a big salad, water, and I even worked out. And then this morning, Tuesday, I wake up feeling light, no phlegm, no mucus, no odd feelings in my body. I felt really good and not sore at all from having worked out. So that was interesting. Not at all surprising to me, but it may be surprising to some other people that aren't aware of this, the effects of food on the body.
Excellent. Excellent.
How about you?
Well, I think it's starting to get interesting for me. I started both yesterday and today with smoothies. Had a mid-morning snack of 2 bananas each day. For lunch, smoothies and a couple pieces of whole fruit. I would come home and have a real small raw vegan gourmet snack before I did some exercise, and then finish the day out with a big salad. So that seemed to really hold me through last week. But yesterday and today, I've been more hungry, more tired, and less patient. The smells from the cafe at work and the flyers for restaurants hanging about have been much more tempting to me the last couple of days. And I can really see that this is a point where people that are just sort of dabbling in the idea of a raw vegan lifestyle might question their commitment. But that said, I'm approaching these feelings with a sense of awareness about my psychological desire for things like pizza and packaged processed foods and things like that. I feel healthier, and I don't want to go back to the sluggishness that I had before this. And as well, there's been a couple of people this season at the office who have had illness, and I want to keep myself healthy, so I'm sticking with it. This actually is a good segue into our topic for today. Can we talk a bit about why you think we get sick? We've been taught that viruses, bacteria, candida, genetics are all sort of things beyond our control. But what do you think illness really is?
Well, let me just say that I got my education in the Western allopathic, from the Western allopathic perspective with regards to health. And in my work, I worked a lot in cardiac rehab, wellness centers. I worked as a personal trainer, and then in the more recent years as a Spanish language medical interpreter, and in the medical field. And it's like being a fly on the wall where you learn so many interesting things. And I learned the same as everyone else. For example, I learned that some illnesses are genetic and we're at their mercy. There's nothing we can do about it. I've learned that some diseases are contagious and that bacteria and viruses are things that we need to, worry about and protect ourselves from at all costs. And I learned that vaccines are great for adults, children, and animals. So, but after getting out of school and working in the field, I started kind of to read what I want, and I started attracting people into my life that I learned from, that were in the holistic medicine field. A lot of people that were older than me and much more experienced in this aspect. And then I've done my own reading and research, and also I've lived my own experiences and have found out that not all that we have learned is true.
That's true.
Yep.
Share with our viewers out there who some of our inspirations have been.
Well, I think for you, many years ago, you wanted to eat more naturally, like in the wild primates. So you read a lot, Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey, is it? And then you watched the film by Joe Cross, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead.
Right.
We watched Food Matters, where we learned about David Wolfe. And then when I got sick about a year and a half ago, I started watching Dan McDonald on YouTube. His channel's Life Regenerator. And he's been a raw foodist for almost 15 years. And early on in his life, he was a bodybuilder, and he pumped himself full of steroids and meat and animal proteins and drugs and other things that he's not proud of to this day. But he has been able to recover and build his body back up into excellent health from that. So that was really motivating. I figure if someone with that kind of background and those kind of toxins in his body can heal themselves, I should be able to get myself cured from allergies and asthma.
Right, absolutely.
You know, and then Dan McDonald turned me on to Robert Morse, who's a naturopathic doctor, and he's also lived and experienced raw foods. I was so intrigued by his information and his books that I got my level 1 detox certification through him. And then we've seen other videos like Martha Rothkranz, he makes Marcus Rothkranz. Mm-hmm. He makes some really fun and educational videos. He knows how to hold your attention. And then Douglas Graham, who's a chiropractor, and he trains athletes. Mm-hmm. I think he's also a raw foodist. Mm-hmm. And there's Charlie Abel, who does bodybuilding as a raw foodist. Mm-hmm. So we've seen read from people of all kinds of backgrounds and interests. So it's been exciting for us, I think, just to explore different things.
It really has, and I would say for my part too, maybe the biggest inspiration for me has been my own parents. They are not 100% raw vegans, but most of what they eat, or the largest part of what they eat, is what they grow. And they have really made an effort to do the best that they can to just live responsibly. And I think that by virtue of the way that they live, I can't think of any couple that is happier and more loving than they are. And so the only regret that I have is that I spent the first 40-some years of my life rebelling against that, rather than learning from the wisdom. But
some things are learned in hindsight.
It is, and I'm glad that I'm learning from it now. So.
And they're in excellent health. They're like in their 70s.
Right.
And they're in, your mother jogs, and
mm-hmm.
Your dad works out.
They're both very active. So
they go hiking.
And they spend a lot of time outside
yeah.
and working.
A lot of fresh
working
air,
with the earth
walking,
and things. So.
Working in the earth, yeah.
So they've been a really good template, I think, for us about maybe the way that we want to spend our lives. But let's get back to...
Except not living up north. Just kidding.
Let's get back to illness in and of itself. What are some of the beliefs from these inspirations that we have about why it is that we do get sick?
Well, Dr. Morse, this is one of the things I've learned from him. He will tell you how in chemistry there are two sides, acid and alkaline. And the body tries to maintain a balance called homeostasis. That's the mechanism that allows our body to stay in balance. This mechanism controls our heart rate, our blood pressure, our temperature, and brings things back to normal mm-hmm. from any extreme. But certain things throw that balance off, like when we eat more acidic foods. And I'm not talking about necessarily foods that produce like acid reflux. So people say, well, I don't have acid reflux, I don't have acidosis. I'm talking about systemic acidosis throughout your body, whether or not you have acid reflux in the esophagus. There are certain foods that are more acidic, like animal proteins, especially red meat and grains. And we hear often about people who stop eating animal proteins and their arthritis, their rheumatoid arthritis, their inflammations go away. A lot of times their autoimmune diseases, as they call them, go away. Now, there are people out there that will say, well, the body normally balances itself out. You don't have to avoid certain foods or eat, alkaline fruits and vegetables to achieve that. And if this was many centuries ago, maybe in a different time in history, I would probably agree with that. But today we eat so much food, we eat so much of a mishmash of combination of food at the same time. We eat so often. We eat when we're not hungry. We eat when we're under stress, which affects the digestive system.
Oh, right.
And then we eat foods that acidify our body. So I think we have to do more than just rely on a mechanism that is just overloaded and overtaxed. So that's one aspect of illness, is the acid-alkaline balance. The other has to do with lymphatic fluid. Now, there are two fluids in the body, blood and lymph. When we hear about blood tests all the time. We go to the doctor, they check our blood, see if the numbers are off. And the problem with that is that the range that they look at in terms of normal values, they're measuring large values within that range, so that something has to be really out of whack for it to show up on a blood test, and by then the person's usually like really not well. So if it was at least a test that showed more of the micro units, that might be more helpful. And the other problem with the blood consideration is that doctors never mention lymphatic fluid. Not that I've heard. So here's the thing with the lymphatic fluid. Blood and lymph circulate through our body. The blood has the heart that pumps it through. But the lymph does not have an organ that pumps it through. The way that we move lymph is to exercise, to walk, to do the rebounder like trampoline, or to get a massage or give ourselves a lymphatic massage. And blood and lymph are both responsible for bringing toxins to the kidneys to get filtered. But let's say the kidneys are full of mucus, the adrenals are worn out, so the kidneys aren't working. The adrenals are the glands that sit on top of the kidneys. And due to that overload, they're not eliminating toxins, so we have this backup. And let me just add that just because we pee does not mean we're filtering. A lot of people think that everything's fine, I'm urinating, you know. Mm-hmm. Dr. Morse recommends, as gross as this may sound, peeing in a cup and seeing if you see sediment floating toward the bottom. Men apparently can see this in the toilet when they urinate, but anybody can actually just pee in a glass jar, leave it sitting there, and see if you see the sediment forming. So most of the things that we call illness and disease are actually, they boil down to two things: acidosis mm-hmm. and lymphatic backup and accumulations.
Okay. But what about the colon? I mean, we hear often about the colon being a problem. Talk about that.
Well, the kidneys are one of the eliminative organs in the body. And when the kidneys aren't working, the skin will try to take over. And we see this when we have anything from pimples and acne to cysts and boils to tumors and growths and warts in our body. What the kidneys don't filter, the skin tries to excrete. So the kidneys are one eliminative organ, along with the skin, which is considered a third kidney. The colon is the other one. Humans can have about up to 10 pounds of fecal matter in their colon at any time. So many people think just because they have a bowel movement, they're cleaned out from the day before. But that's not the case, because we have seen how the colon is a long organ, and it has many turns and twists and many pockets where things like meat and grains get stuck in those pockets. Meat sits there and ferments. Sugar sits there and ferments when we have actual glucose. Antibiotics that we've had, other chemicals, objects that we've swallowed as children can sometimes come out later on in life when people get like colonics. We saw that in one of the videos. I think it was Simply Raw that was in, but I don't remember. So, so it's important to go to the bathroom daily. If not, you're not eliminating your toxins well from your body. And on the other end, some people think, hey, just because I go to the bathroom every day, I'm in good health. And that's not the case. You have to look at a more global perspective of health.
Okay.
It's not just one factor.
So what about people that feel like they already are in good health, though?
Well, I think if a person has great energy and they don't have any health problems and they're sleeping good and their stress is low, I think that's awesome. I think it's rare to find people that are like that, and it's wonderful if you're one of those. But I think what happens is we get used to a certain way of being, a certain way of feeling, and we just accept that as normal. So we'll go, I don't have any health problems. Yeah, I get a headache, but it's no big deal. It happens at night. Or, yeah, I'll get seasonal allergies, but but I'm fine other than that. I get shots for it, or I take medicine. These things are not normal. These things are your body talking to you and trying to tell you it needs to be cleaned out. And just because you're feeling okay at this level, you don't know what you're going to feel like once you get to this level. So by eating healthier, by stopping putting processed foods and other foods that are toxifying our bodies, you can actually become more alive and awake and aware and go, hey, this is the kind of health I want. And then you realize how you weren't feeling that well before. And some people, especially people or gas too, that's another one. They have a lot of gas. It's not normal to have a lot of gas. If you have a lot of gas, there's something else going on. There's things fermenting in your body. And we notice that from when we eat a lot of cooked foods versus when we're eating raw foods. Right. Totally different. Mm-hmm. Totally different. I also have heard people say, oh, well, I'm too old to worry about changing my diet. I'm 70 and 80. I want to die happy. Well, let me tell you, if you can eat these kinds of foods and you feel great, you have energy, you can walk with no problems, you can dance, you can have a life you want, and you feel great, that's awesome. That's wonderful. But people tend to live now into their 90s, into their 100s. So ask yourself, even if you're 70 or 80, do I want to live the next 20 or 30 years in good health, or just at this kind of, so-so level? Because 20, 30 years is a long time to live when you're not feeling good. True.
So to summarize then, it's important to consider the acid-alkaline balance.
Yeah.
And the ability for the kidneys and the colon to function properly, and turn our focus to lymph as opposed to blood when we're figuring out how to resolve problems and we want to feel better.
Pretty much.
So,
it's the
easiest
way to understand it.
Right. So thank you for watching. In our next video, we're going to get a little bit slimy when we talk about mucus and fungi.
Doesn't get much funner than that. Have a good night. Thank you for joining us.
And fade out.